Good evening, everybody. It's 6:32, and this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. It's Wednesday, August 8th, 2018. And if you join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, Randy, please.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard and our legal counsel Roger Zappa. There is no committee members present,
Thank you.
or staff.
Or public. We
Or
have nobody
public.
tonight. That's probably goofed them up because of the election yesterday. They probably didn't think about the meeting tonight, but we're all here. So we can skip down actually to 4. And we will make a couple changes for you. 6, privilege comment. Sarah Cambenzi suggested we meet maybe in October or November when she has something to actually share. She said it's been awfully quiet. So she figured she'd wait till after the election, and we'll schedule something with her after. The next thing we're going to change is we're removing, let me take my paper clip off here, 8B and C. 8B and C. You can strike those off. B is a duplicate. I'm not sure how that ended up there. And C, Randy and Jason and I talked today. I'm not sure how that got on there. It might have been a placeholder, but we'll talk about the CIP when we do the budget. So we don't need to talk about those tonight. So I just need a motion to approve it as amended.
Well, you have to do the consent agenda first, and then that will be on the...
That's right,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Or,
Actually, I need to read it before we say yes. I'm sorry. I am very tired tonight. Approval of the work session minutes of July 12th, regular and closed session minutes of July 17th, bills payable in the amount of $564,776.04, road committee meeting agenda for August 8th, the rec committee work session agenda for August 2nd, and draft minutes of July 17th, utility review committee report as of June 30th, fire department's officers and business meeting draft minutes of July 9th, my supervisor's report, correspondence from Charter, of course, regarding channel lineup, and the treasurer's report for May and June of 2018. Now we can vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So, rest of the agenda, I've told you those 3 items that are coming off.
I'll move to accept the agenda as amended.
Support.
I have a question.
Sure.
Why are we not going to talk about the CIP requests until we actually start the budget?
Because we don't really need to. It's a budget discussion item.
Oh, plus, I don't think we have, do we have any CIP stuff in our packet
No.
tonight? I have not seen any
I
CIP
was
stuff
gonna grab
yet,
my
so.
planning. I think it was a placeholder. I think it wasn't meant to be on there yet. I haven't talked to Andrew.
Well, I don't have a problem about talking about it, but we shouldn't be, if we don't have it in front of us, I think it's hard to talk about in some respects.
Well, I agree with that part, but I would respectfully disagree that we don't need to talk about it until we do budget. I think there's a lot of issues there that need to be discussed.
But I don't think anybody has the information in front of them
I'm
either.
not saying tonight, I'm just
Oh.
saying before we start the budget.
That's fine. If you want to put it on the next agenda, I can, and at least get you the backup information.
Yeah, before we talk about it, I think we should see the whole package, and then we can talk about it, if it's
The whole
available.
CIP package or
Yeah,
the
if
whole
it's,
budget
well,
package?
no, the whole CIP, it should be available if the budget's getting done.
Yeah. I didn't mean we weren't going to talk about it
Well,
at all.
it was sent down from the planning commission, and I was just wondering why we didn't discuss it based on what the package that was sent down was.
I think some of the confusion was I was trying to get the agenda set up before I left. And when I came back, it was kind of done, and Randy, I don't think even had a chance to look at it. I'm not sure if he did. It was kind of a mess with us. And Randy was just getting back from his trip. So this is kind of a goofy agenda.
I think we could probably put it on the next one. If we have the information, if the planning commission has it done, we can put it in the next agenda and talk about
They
it.
did have a recommendation. Okay, I'll add it for the 18th, or 21st. Okay.
A motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. Regular agenda.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so we have no privilege comment. Community linkage, I checked with Jason, and we expect to hear on the results of our survey at the next meeting. That should be on our 21st agenda also. Lots of responses. He said it's taking a little bit longer for them to compile it. Policy discussion, consideration, and development. Tonight, it's the 2015 Michigan Recreation Passport Grant Project Agreement Amendment Resolution. Jason informed me this afternoon that he would not be at the meeting tonight to talk about this, and I'm not sure what backup information Randy has, but in order for us to finish all of our requirements for the passport grant, we have invoices yet that need to be turned in for reimbursement, and we need to ask for an extension.
Yeah, and basically what the history of this is, and Jason did have to be out of town. He's not in town this evening, so that's why he's not here at the meeting. But what this involves is the Recreation Passport Grant that was awarded in 2015 that was targeted to be completed by the end of 2017. We went through the bidding process and did not receive any compliant bids, any qualified bids. So that was delayed, and it's the project that was just being finished at Lions Field. So what has been requested is an extension for the payment through the end of this year, which the MNRTF is agreeable to, but the board needs to adopt a resolution approving it.
So it's not something that we wouldn't get, but we do have to go through the motions of approving.
It's for
it.
reimbursement, basically. It's for us to get the reimbursement from MNRTF.
John?
Move to concur with the recommendation of staff and approve the amended resolution.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion or questions? Dave?
Just a
Dan?
Clarification, Randy, it's not the MNRTF, it's passport grant, right?
I'm sorry, passport, yes, you're correct. I get the
Passport
two.
grant deals with Lions Field, the MNRTF grant deals with Schwimmer.
Schwemmwood, you're correct.
It's a barrier-free trail project.
Yes, that's the pathway and the benches and picnic tables and all that barbecues over at Lions Field.
Thanks for that clarification. We don't need any kind of a,
The only thing I would suggest is designation of a signatory, who's going to sign it.
Well, I think the clerk is the person on there. I
It says the
believe.
clerk on it, so.
okay. So we can put that in the motion? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. Authorize the clerk to sign it. Okay. All in favor?
So
I
It's a
was just gonna
it's
say.
a roll
That's what I
call.
started to ask. Yes, go ahead.
Trustee Marks.
Yes.
Clerk retires, yes. Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All
I
right.
guess what I was referring to is, can the clerk, since the clerk is certifying the action, can the clerk also be the signatory on the actual document?
I guess that's a Roger question then.
Page 2 of 2 requires a signature for the modification, and then what the clerk is doing is certifying the action.
For the resolution?
There's two documents that need to be signed.
In order to avoid answering the question, you can just designate the supervisor as the signatory.
You mean as a default? Or just in this case?
No.
No,
Okay.
it's, there's the agreement needs to be signed, but then there's also the affidavit of the resolution.
Well, the clerk will sign
Clerk
that,
signs
but the
that.
Yep.
supervisor can sign the amended document here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion on that, or just?
No, I can put it in there. It's, well, no, because the supervisor actually has the authority to sign.
That's why I thought maybe you meant as a default. Okay.
Is that by default?
No. He said no. So we just suggested
We
it.
need a motion and authorizing the supervisor to sign.
No, I think I think it's fine if the supervisor's default signature, right? Yeah, we don't need that.
Okay.
Okay. So B and C are gone.
Cool.
Next up is 9A, consider assessing department compliance information for the AMAR review. And then Dulcie will be at the next meeting to go over this, but because it was such a large packet of information, she wanted to get you a little bit up to speed on what she and I have been talking, and Randy, quite a bit about all of this. There's a meeting, just to back up a little bit, but there's a meeting October, I don't remember, I got the email the other day, down in Traverse City, I believe, or just outside. And the state's pulling together, probably the tax commission is ordering it to have all the assessors or anybody that's interested can go. So I ran in her office yesterday and said, are you guys going? So it looks like she's got a little bit of a carpool from people from around the area. And I'm not sure if Janelle will get to go, but it's actually scheduled for the same day as some training. So there'll be a lot of assessors about an hour from there anyway. So Dulcie's definitely going. She's got a few in her car. I'm not sure about Janelle.
Yeah, Janelle will probably remain in the office just to cover for assessing, but the meeting's actually in Gaylord.
She'll be in Traverse
Yep,
City.
and she's going to be going there from that, and it's basically the point that they're trying to do is to have as many municipalities, as many entities represented as possible to give a representation from the UP. This is the closest meeting that's being scheduled to the UP, but to get the representation from the UP in terms of what the impact to us would be up here. So that's the point of going to the meeting in Gaylord.
There's 3 meetings they have scheduled, and this is the farthest northern one of the 3. And it just happens to be at the right time.
Lynn, I thought that was only could be one, one meeting, consists of one meeting. It's only set up for 70 people to attend.
Right.
Nope, that must be a different one, because I just got the email yesterday.
Oh, okay, because down in Escanaba there, when we had the thing, they said there only be one meeting, 70 people, and you got 2 hours. And you sort of, and if you're not allowed to talk or make any comments or reference to another speaker, because they're going to cut you off.
Oh,
And so this is going to be a very important meeting. I really believe that they should flood this meeting, and I think they should have letters from the different townships and that going in there and tell them it's sort of a railroad job. Because when Dulcie, what is it?
yeah,
Dulcie. D-A.
D-U.
UL.
Okay. When she's explaining it at the convention or the conference summit down there, and I stopped her, I said, they're doing it on purpose. They're really ramrodding all this stuff, and it's so goofed up because that's all she asked for. If the levels are staying the same, that's what they should be doing throughout the state. And all the rules will be the same, and they're just not. And I don't have the report from that meeting, but I wrote some stuff down, but it's just like, we're darn lucky to have her because she's very well-spoken. She knows what she's talking about. And in the future, the assessors that we're going to have out there, you might not have any because nobody's interested in doing it because it's such a goofed up thing. And what's good up here is not good downstate. The levels 1, 2, and 3, what they're asking for, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 being master, they're not following that. So it's just a cluster, and it's just not right. And so I'm glad, I talked to her today, and I'm glad she's going down there, and I'm glad she got some other girls, or assessors, to go with her. And I think it's very important, that she gets every person she can to go to that meeting, but there are only gonna be spaces for 70, and that's
Yeah, I'm not
unreal
sure.
for this important thing as far as assessing, and they're only gonna put 70 people in there.
I'm wondering if it evolved since, and I'm trying to find the email, because I went into her office yesterday as soon as I got it. And that's not the way she described it at all. So
Well,
I don't know.
there's two meetings going on. One's in Traverse City and one's in Gaylord.
Is it, the Gaylord one's only 70
Gaylord is the one that
people?
she's going over to that one. I think they may have modified their position somewhat, but I think trustee LaRue is correct, is that this was on a very fast track to get passed. I'm not sure what impact the midterm elections yesterday will have on this. I think some of the shoe-ins that were being planned didn't get shoed in, and it may have an impact on where this goes. Basically, I had sent out this morning the Gongwer rendition, basically, of who's being replaced and who didn't prevail in the primaries around the state, and there a little bit of wind might have been taken out of sails. I'm not sure, but I think it is a very important meeting to be at, because it really does significantly change the assessing structure throughout the state, and it's, in my opinion, not for the best.
Well, the AMAR review was put into effect maybe 5 years ago or so. We were talking about that, and it's trying to give a little more structure and organization to the way the assessors do their job throughout the state, so that there is more consistency. They're using the same coding, the software is up to date, and it's all a little more uniform. They're saying the same thing about these changes that they want to try to implement, or, I mean, the legislation's pending, under the guise of it being, more organized and more efficient, and
Well, and
it totally changes the way the whole structure is.
Well, it does, and basically what it's doing is it's reacting to some communities and some assessors not following the rules, and it's like many of the other laws, it's, covering everybody for the 10% that are not following what's going on, as opposed to addressing that 10%. So that's one of the biggest issues that we had with this, is it's a broad sweeping change to the entire structure that's going to dramatically change how assessing is done, and from my standpoint, likely have a very significant impact on revenue streams, a sizable impact on revenue streams. Not a positive impact.
But some of the class, like a 400 class, they have in a 401 class, it's just residential property. 401 stands for improved property, but they're not all using the same codes. And so altogether, there's 740 level 3 assessors and only 149 masters.
Level 4s.
Level 4s, yeah, that's level 4.
In the state, but yeah, I think that Delsey is one of 2 up here or something.
Yeah,
It's real limited in the UP.
but I got August 14th, Gaylord, Michigan, 70 people. You can't be cut off. She did a great job down there. I'm not trying to blow her horn or anything, but she did. There are 3 people on the panel. They had one from Baraga Equalizing Department, and they had one from Monttrain, the supervisor. The one from Copper Country sort of railroaded the state and she down mouthing it, and the other lady just read off her report off her sheet, and you didn't get much to it, unless you could fast write her. I wish I would have took my tape recorder, because that was one of the interesting ones down there. And there's a lot of problems within it, and I'm glad she's going down there to do something about it, try to understand it better, and so hopefully we get some good results.
I didn't know if anybody had any questions. I mean, you can save them for Dulcie next meeting. Have her explain this a little bit better. Go ahead, John.
I just wanted to comment that the report from our township assessor was excellent.
She's totally willing to answer lots of questions next time, too. But this gives you a little bit of a background. So we will have that on the meeting again next week, or next meeting. right. We also had a little mix-up, 9B, on our policy governance calendar. So I think what we're gonna do, I think the easiest thing to do, if you don't mind, is to, down there. Randy had already kind of put together his responses to pretty much 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So we just left them in there. We've already talked about those in January for the most part. And some of these do repeat over the course of the year, like the financial I was telling you about at last meeting. So I think what I'd like to do, if we want to flip through these quickly, or if you have questions, there's a lot of them here. But again, we did go through a lot of them in January. And I'd like to have a work session maybe next month, even to cover 2.1 and 2.2, maybe even 2.4, and get those done. And then I've moved, I think I sent you the updated calendar. I've moved 1 and 1.4 to December. And the reason I kind of moved a couple of these is because the financial part is more involved with the CIP timeframe. So that needs to be around September, October. And the ends needs to be around December before we start going forward. I also moved the committees to November because we're going to be looking at them in December. So if we could do a work session whenever it's convenient for you guys, sometime between now and September, for 2.1 and 2.2, and we can kind of look at the rest of these tonight. That's what I'd like to recommend. 'Cause I know we talked originally about having these initial discussions at a work session anyway, so we can hammer them out and then bring the results back to the board meeting. But since Randy had all these done, and we had kind of already talked about them, I just left them in here. So 2.0 is the overview. Says township management shall not cause or allow any practice, activity, decision, or organizational circumstance which is either unlawful, imprudent, or in violation of commonly accepted public and administrative practice and professional ethics. That's pretty much what blankets the whole 2.0 liability and risk management. And does anybody have any questions? Did you make any notes on going through these sections at all? And you want to point out or ask the manager? It was pretty straightforward. But remember, what we're doing is reviewing the policies that we have in place. This is, the book is what we've adopted. Randy put it together in a binder for us. But that's the purpose of seeing, and that's, if you look at your little tag up in front of you, it says, what has already been said about these topics? So we're talking about compensation, benefits, management authority, financial conditions. We've already pretty much talked about this stuff. Are there decisions to be made that are the board's only decisions? Some of these fall to Randy. Talks about the budget, receivables. We have policies in place, some of them through different ones through the policy itself, or maybe through the personnel manual or something else. Some of these all fit together. And the last question is, are the existing policies adequate? So that's what you should be asking yourself when you're looking at these policies. Does it meet what we think we're trying to do? Does it follow all the plans and policies we already have in place? Does it follow our guidelines? Does it follow the personnel manual? Does that make sense? Any thoughts or arguments, or Randy?
The only thing I would say is that we're only about a year out on this. So, and I understand about reviewing this in a timely manner every year, but we've just basically created it and we're only 1 year out. So that's why I think when we created it, I don't think a lot of things have changed since we've started.
So new.
It's so new. So So I think a lot of these things will be the same until we get a few years out. And then possibly if things change, then we'll have to, amend things. But I think it's like a review for us for the first year of going through what we created last year. And then it's an ongoing review every year, so.
And I don't think it has to be as structured as it is, unless you disagree. I think we can glean over these next year. I don't think it has to be quite so structured, like you said, because it is new. We spent hours working in a work session to put this together.
We've spent many hours, actually, the previous board spent many hours on this, creating it, that we didn't start at the time, but we used the existing document from that time, moved it forward to when we created this. So there was a lot of thought put into this when we created it. And I agree with you. We can just, unless things dramatically change, I think we're okay.
Well, what you should kind of think is, as you read through these, is there a policy we'd like to have, too? It isn't just about reviewing what we have, but now that we've had 6 or 8 months to really chew on this, more than that, almost a year, has anything changed? And maybe it hasn't. Maybe there's nothing else that we need to have a policy on. I don't know. Randy, I think you had your hand up. Eat first. I saw it down there.
Since it's so new, I don't think we need any more work sessions on it. Just let it go like it is right now, because we got the budget coming up and we've got enough work coming up. We don't need more work sessions on something like this.
Okay.
No.
Ernie?
I agree with Pete. I think we have to get through a whole year cycle, I think. And then as we get into the second year, see how this stuff is falling into place in that. And it may fall in fine, and there may be some minor changes that we're seeing that has to be modified. So, but it's kind of hard when you haven't had a full year cycle as to how things are all going to come together in that too. So.
Well, some of these we haven't, like 4.0 on the means monitoring, I think that was in June or July, and I figured we might as well talk about it in September, because that's when the manager's contract comes up. So we can see if the policies we have in place pertain to that. And like I said, this financial stuff, we've really already talked about it, but it was on here a second time. So I thought I'd bring it up, and, that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't want to decide this stuff on my own, to just remove things. And then we'll talk about the ends. We need to talk about the committees, if, our structure, as we put that together for next year. So I think this is, we don't need to mess with this unless you have issues. And I just figured if you want to talk about committees.
Or if while we don't have an issue, if an issue comes up that the manager reports, some department head reports through the manager, then we can review it. But until then, I agree, let's let it ride for a while.
Let it work for itself.
Okay, that's fine with me. It takes a lot to put this together, so if you're all right with that, I'll cross off the work sessions. We'll talk about financial planning when we do our budgeting.
Lynn?
Yes, sir. Oh,
Just, not to, expand discussion, but actually you've got 3 bites at this apple. The way we're working right now. The definition of 2.0 that you just looked at is basically covered by my job description. So you're in the process right now of doing performance evaluation. Randy, did job description go out with the questionnaire?
I don't believe so, but I
Okay.
can send one out.
But the job description defines what my duties and responsibilities are. The policy manual that's currently in place, as well as the policy manual you adopted, the policy governance, we're working together to determine what pieces of the policy governance are already covered by a policy and whether it's adequate. And if it's not there or it's not adequate, how does it need to be changed? And then doing the performance evaluation, the form that you're using asks you essentially the same questions. How am I doing on finance? How am I doing with public relations? How am I doing with, so you get into all of those things in the, was it 12 or 14 questions, in the performance evaluation. So all those things tie together for you as a governing body to be able to stand up in front of anybody and say, what's your issue? We've got that covered, and here's how it's covered. So I mean, it's kind of a protective tool for you as well, but Clerk Rattari is absolutely right, and Trustee LaRue and Johnson, Marks, is you're in that molding process right now. You've got the classification and compensation system, who handles it one way. You've got the current policy manual that addresses in more detail, and now you're trying to pull all those together under the umbrella of policy governance, so you have one document. That's where you'll be at the end of the year cycle, is you'll be ready to combine all those together or reference them back and forth to say, this is how we've covered this.
I figured it was more of a review. I don't want to go through all of it, but it gave you a chance to kind of chew on it and say, hey, is this how we do this, or we really should change this, or it's fine, or whatever.
I think if you set those three pieces together, you've got the job description that says thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do this. Then you've got the policy manual that says this is how you're going to do it or not do it. And then this document ties it all together with a means and an end. That you address basically twice. You'll be addressing it in the performance evaluation as to how I've done the job and the job description defines within the policies, and then ultimately come down at the end of the year into that second year having one document that includes all of that in one place rather than three.
Thus, the means, or the ends, rather.
That's the ends.
December.
And then it makes it easier for you going forward to just have one document to go to. If a situation comes up or an issue comes up, you go to your policy manual that falls under either 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 section, and there's individual policies under that. Did that occur? If it didn't, then you need to modify the policy to ensure that it doesn't occur. If it didn't occur, then you have documentation that it didn't.
Okay. I didn't see any issues, but I've looked at this more often probably than you guys, so, but if you don't have any questions or anything, we can move on. 9C, board committee updates. I just have one. I'm sure Dave has a couple. I just want to let you know that I'm meeting with Andrea from the library, Andrea, to, at the library tomorrow at 10 with our 2 liaisons. And it's my thought, if you concur, that unless, and Andrea and I have talked about this and she agrees, unless our representatives from the township to the Township Advisory Council, which is the library liaison to the board, unless they are going to provide a function for us, then we don't need them. It's basically, I'm just, paraphrasing, but the intent from the beginning, when I went back and read how the TAC was formed, was that township residents who participated in the millage for the library had to have some kind of a connection to the township or the library board. So each municipality that participated contributed 1 or 2 people, and they would be the liaison. They would represent the township to the library board. And we don't have that. We have 2 volunteers who are devoted library people, which is great. I mean, I'm not condemning anybody. They're providing a service for the town, for the library, but they don't give us a report, first of all. I don't know that they ever have an
Well,
actual report. I think maybe once.
They do give the minutes quarterly.
No, not the TAC.
Well,
They don't,
well, our representative gives at least myself, she'll send me the minutes of the TAC, and that they meet, quarterly? So that's the report I get from one of the,
okay.
so that's what I get.
They have never come. I think once one of them came and addressed us.
Yeah,
They
but-
gave us an update.
But that's the report I get so.
Okay. Well, hang on, John. So the other side of that is they aren't representing the township. They're not coming to our meetings and saying, okay, what are we talking about budget-wise? Or we've made numerous requests saying we'd like to have them consider another way of funding. And when I brought it up at the TAC level, you could have said I just shot somebody. They were so upset that I even mentioned it. Have to have the discussion. So in my mind, they don't represent the township interests, which is the intent of the TAC members, and we're not getting feedback. And it's just been recently that Andrea and I had set up where we were gonna get the minutes, and I got the packet as the representative, but the board didn't see it. So those are my issues with it. I know, John, you're about ready to jump out of your seat.
Yeah, I'll tell you why, too. It all depends on who you appoint to be that representative. And I can tell you, if you want to look back in your records, or the township records, you'll find in-depth reports when I was the member, representing the city, representing the township.
Right.
And coming with all kinds of lengthy reports about what was wrong with what was going on. So don't just paint us all with the same brush.
I'm not talking about you.
You are. When you say that these people are not representing us properly,
Right.
and you're implying that that's the position is not, it all depends on who appoints and who received the reports and who took action from those reports. And you were on the board when those reports were turned in a long time ago about what was wrong with the relations at the library.
Right.
And basically, it all gets down to township pays the money, but it has no voice in the administration. And as our treasurer has reported a couple times, we pay about a third of their budget and have no voice at all. That's what we should be angry about.
Well, that's what I'm saying. These
Oh, well,
the two
well-
board members, I'm not sure what you heard, but the two liaisons we have are not providing the function. They're not
They are
providing the
not,
service,
and-
right.
And that would all depend on who you have.
And I didn't appoint these people, but they ask to be renewed every year, and this board agrees, so we have the same status quo.
Dave asked a question about 2 meetings ago. Is it possible that things have changed? And it was a logical question to ask. So I gave him and the rest of the board a copy of the report that was made while this person was the representative there. And it went into detail. Not a damn thing has changed. They're still running it the way they want, and we're not recognized as having any right to any power whatsoever. So, pardon me for getting excited, but this is, you can't paint all the representatives that have been there with the same brush.
Well, I wasn't talking about all the representatives. I'm saying now.
Well, it
You're the
isn't-
one that got
no,
me
it isn't.
excited about this in the first place, because I agree with you. That's why I started asking if I could go to the board meetings at the library. I agree with you. I'm saying right now, that's not happening. We don't have representation. It has nothing to do with the past. That's my objection right now, and I'd like to say that to them. Who's first, Dave?
Well, I really hate to agree with John. But it just seems to me, and what I'm hearing you say is that if we're not going to get information back from the representatives we currently have, then we might just well disband it. And I would disagree with that. I would say that maybe we need to give them better direction onto what we expect out
Well,
of
we're going to
them.
start with that tomorrow.
And if they can't do
Yes.
that, then we should replace them. That's how simple it gets.
Right. That's what Andrea and I talked about. Maybe I didn't vent my frustration
But-
correctly.
The idea of representation and getting a voice on the board, I mean, that's not even an issue yet, because it's just, we haven't even brushed up against that. But all we really need to start with is we need to get the information of what comes out of the board, and this board needs to be represented at their meeting. And it's just better direction by this board to the people that are representing us.
Well, that's what we're going to start with tomorrow. Andrea and I figured that out. So maybe I jumped the gun and got to the end
Mike.
before.
Why Andrea and you figured that out? It would seem to me that it would be this board sending direction to
That's what
our
I'm asking
representatives.
Well, have her come here and talk about it.
She
Instead-
thought it would be best if we pulled the two representatives together and explained to them their function. Okay, we're gonna start with that. And are they willing, because they're gonna be renewed, are they willing to continue in the job that they have with the understanding of what their duties are?
That's back to my comment. I don't understand what Andrea has to
To do with our response.
telling our representatives what their duties and responsibilities are. That is our job as a board, to tell them what we expect of them for representation, what we expect for them in reports and how frequently we expect those reports, and the fact that we need to be able to inform them of policies or the consensus of this board and take it back to the library. I mean, that has to do strictly with this board. I don't know what it has to do with Andrea.
Support.
Because she and I thought that because we don't even know these women, and they were in place long before this board was even
They were reappointed.
Guarantee you that Andrea knows.
by us, yeah.
I-
But we don't even know
I
them.
understand all that, but
That
I
it would
just,
be easier to, if she were part of the conversation, to explain to these ladies what needs to be done.
I respectfully disagree. I think that's something that
It's
needs
our
to come
job.
from this board.
Okay.
The thought that you're going to get the library director to tell our people what they should be doing, I have to remind you that the previous library director created the Township Advisory Board to the library because there was an upsurge of people from Chocolate and Marquette Township and others that were members of the library. And they were complaining that they weren't being represented properly, much like the complaint we've heard here. It was that library director's response to that, to create the Township Advisory Council. And so that gave her the license to say, well, now you do have representation. And so they went for years doing that. And anytime anyone said, we're not being represented, she would say, wait a minute, you have the Township Advisory Council, you have two people that you appoint and send. But when they get appointed and sent, if they don't have proper instructions, much what Dave is asking for, they fall victim of being cheerleaders for the library. And they get to go to the social functions and stand around the,
Punch bowl?
well, I was shrimp bowl. They do a fine presentation. I never was at one, but I've seen pictures. That's how they get entertained. That's how they get their social life. So what you've got is something that has an outgrowth of an excuse that they created. And that's all that the Township Advisory Council is. It's just an excuse to say you do have representation.
To finish my thought,
Yeah.
to have Andrea sit in on that with our representatives to that Township Advisory Council would be the same thing as having the mayor sit in on our manager's evaluation. It's the same thing.
We didn't create the TAC. And in fact,
No.
Andrea said when we talked about this.
You're missing
yeah.
my point.
No, we manage the manager. That's
All I'm
that's a
saying
little
is
bit
to
different.
have Andrea sit in with our TAC representatives is the same thing as having the mayor sit in with our manager evaluation. It's the same principle. These people represent the township. They work for the township. They may be volunteers, but they work for the township, and they should take direction from the township. And if they can't take that direction, we should find some new people.
What do we want them to know? To go back? I've heard you when you went back and you come back, oh, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of time. Well, what are we supposed to be doing? You know, what do we want those to go there and what information do we want back? And I think that's up to us to decide what we want them to go there and get the information and report back to us.
I think they should be providing a report the same as I provide a report on the planning commission and road and rec committees. And they should provide that on a monthly basis.
Well, quarterly, they don't meet
And,
monthly.
and they should go back, how often does the library board meet?
They meet once a month.
Then they should be providing that. And,
That's what I'm trying to get to.
and they should take back from that report any things that this board is concerned about. They should take our concerns back
bring it
to
up.
the board.
Exactly. That's what I told Andrea. So.
Direction all comes from us, not from Andrea.
So in talking to her about, because I wasn't going to step on her toes and say that we were gonna get rid of these people or have meetings or tell them what we're gonna do. This was created long before we were here. She already has a working relationship with these two people, and so does their board.
But we sent them there.
We didn't. We approved it by,
Right. But they're working,
Renewing
they're
their-
representing the township when they're going, so we can do what we want with them.
Right.
And tell them
So-
what they want.
so I called Andrea and I said,
And we shouldn't have nothing to say
Personally,
about that.
I'm not happy with the representation we're getting. I don't feel that those two women know what they're supposed to do. They have no idea they're supposed to be coming to our meetings, finding out what we want, that they represent us. They work for us. It's exactly what I told
Can
her.
we change it,
And
not
ask
her?
her. And she said, I don't believe that any of our volunteers for the TAC or for the work, again, like for the board, know their duties and responsibilities. So in the meantime of us setting this up in the last week or 10 days or whatever, since our last meeting, and I was looking to see, you told me to do something with this, and I thought I made notes, and apparently I don't have them. We'd already talked about this. So the only reason I set it up. I didn't do it on my own.
We're just clarifying.
Yeah. So Andrea said, why don't I print this up? She said, we'd already talked about it at the board level, that all the TAC members were gonna get an explanation. She said, we called it a job description of what they should be doing. So I'm supposed to get that tomorrow, too, so that we can, I'm not gonna walk up to these ladies that I don't even know and say, hey, by the way, you're not doing your job. What are you gonna do about it? They don't even know what their job is.
I understand that. What concerns me is that the library is providing a job description to our representatives.
It's their organization. The TAC is, they set that up.
it's not, Lynn.
We did not, the board did not set that
You're
up.
missing the whole point.
We provide,
We provide the volunteers,
Volunteers.
yes, but it's
We
their
tell them what we want them to
organization.
know.
Right,
We do, not them,
I
not
think
you.
if anybody's gonna review the job description for these representatives, it should be the township board and decide whether we like the job description or not, and then change them as we see fit and clarify what the volunteers' duties and responsibilities are to this board. And we need to clarify that they work for this board, not for the library.
that's true. But I don't think if their organization is creating the TAC and has created the TAC to allow us to have representation superficially, why would I go to them and tell them that the Marquette Township job description is different from Chocolate's description? Why would I do that?
The
This is
library
their
created
organization.
the township advisory
Right.
committee. The township provides the representation in that committee, so
Right.
it's us that decide what we expect out of them in forms of reports
Right?
and what we expect out of them as their duties as liaisons, what we want them to take back for information to the library board. This board decides that.
Right.
If the TAC organization has a set of duties and responsibilities, fine. This board should be aware of what those are. But that aside, the representatives from this township that go to the TAC should do what the duties and what we want.
I get that, I get that.
And where you and I head down different trails is when Andrea's involved in that.
guess I'm not making myself clear then.
Well,
I can see
it's
where she's
clear.
involved in it to the point that she's explaining the duties and responsibilities that they've been given.
How it was set up.
But I think that's where her involvement ends and our involvement should take over.
I agree, 100%. But these ladies do not know what they're expected to do, being a TAC member for the library.
What were their
They don't know.
instructions when they're,
That's what she said. I don't think they have a clue. Nothing was written, there was no classes or anything. They volunteered, somebody at some point on this board appointed them as a committee, and she said they don't know what they're supposed to be doing.
why don't they come in here and we can talk about it?
Have you seen their duties and responsibilities?
No.
I would think it'd be a good idea for the board to get a copy of their duties and responsibilities so that we can review what they are.
And we can set priorities, what we want.
Right.
On attack, going back in time, part of that was because of the dollar amounts that
Don't you put that on?
our township and the rest of them were contributing, and there was no input at all. And that's the past director set it up, and that, for that reason. I'll be honest with you, I attended one meeting, and I said never go back again. It was a farce, complete, absolute farce. They weren't a bit interested in what we as township people were bringing in. I brought up a couple items there that, from this board, because I was sitting on the board. We had some TAC members from a couple of other communities, says, we don't talk about those things here. And that's just what it amounts to, because I was talking about financial stuff. And they didn't want to even talk about that. And I said, this is things that we have to do to make sure their board does. And there were some TAC members, they were just there for the library end of it, and that was it. So, I agree that the members that we have sent, really, the board has not taken the stance of dictating where we want them to go and what to do in that, too. Be honest with you, we don't have a lot of say in the library, really, other than bringing it up, and the board can do what they want in that. I just look at the $224,000 we're contributing this year and that, and we have very little to say about it. And that's my biggest concern.
And we don't get the information back either.
We don't get much back. They could care less.
They won't even tell you how many members they have from the township.
We have to say, in the past, we were getting how many members we had and how many were being checked out, some of this other stuff, none of us. Cards and books and everything, so we had some, we're not getting any of that now.
Keep in mind that the library benefits from having a lot of members because they get state funds. That's why they want to have everybody, and they'll pass out they'll pass out the library cards, memberships, to anyone that will take one in the township, because they get the funds from the state. This whole thing about the library is something that I think you can't look the other way much longer. It's a tremendous amount of money, and it is not being controlled in any way, shape, or form with direction from this board, and clearly not going, and I agree with Lynn, the representation we have now, it's unfair to ask them to be the firm spokespeople for this board. That isn't their culture. I think I was the only person on the library representative board who had a library, had been honored with the library, honorary librarian. I came with some experience from the state level, knowing there's a tremendous amount of money that flows that way. You don't talk about it often, but there are penal fines that we gladly send there, that gets added to this 200 and some thousand. It's at a point where I think it's almost negligent on our part if we don't look into it a little bit further. I think because when you, and this is an argument, now stop. When they ask us to put it on the ballot, they ask our board to do that. There's another way that they can put it on the ballot themselves. But they want you to put it on the ballot because that looks like you're endorsing it. You're making it look like it's a township-sponsored endorsement of a ballot issue. And with that, I'll stop, because that's what happens every couple of years.
Randy?
I will disagree with trustee Marks. They do not have the authority to put anything on the ballot. I did check with legal. That's one of the things libraries cannot do. Even with the petition, they cannot do that. Other things you can, but they cannot do that. Even if the membership came to us with a petition, they cannot put it on the ballot themselves. They cannot.
Okay, so the whole point of this is, we're about to reappoint somebody to a committee that serves no function for us, okay? It's an organization that is not started or run by the township. It's representation, a liaison, whatever you want to call it. It makes me crazy that we not only don't have any kind of board authority, but we have nobody here. That's why I started going to those meetings. And I asked all of you guys twice, will one of you please go to the meetings? Because we have no idea what's going on, okay? This makes me crazy. Every once in a while I get on these tantrums. But we need to know what's going on with that money besides getting minutes. We need to be part of that discussion. And if we have two women who've been on it for 10, 15 years, who don't know that they're representing us, I'm totally fine. I called Andrew to get their phone numbers. How do I get a hold of these women? What do they do? You know, can I ask them to come in to here and visit with them and explain to them, hey, we're not happy with what you're doing, you know, either put up or shut up? So I asked her, because she knows these women. I said, this is your organization. What's a good thing? She said, should we bring them in and have a conversation? And I said, yeah, let's meet at the library so that they're probably more comfortable. And explain to them, they're not doing their job. That's what I want to do.
But the problem is, we haven't defined the job.
But they don't even know what the intent was. If you want me to cancel the appointment, if you want them in here, I will do whatever you want. But I thought my direction was to get a hold of these women and have a conversation with them. I can find it in the minutes. It was somewhere.
They can come right here and
I
talk
didn't
to you.
do this, make this up on my own. Randy?
And you got to remember, these are just volunteers.
Yes.
We can't blow this out of proportion. If they watch this meeting, they're probably going to be very angry, and they might quit because.
And I don't want to embarrass them and have this kind of conversation. I just wanted to get together with them and explain to them what
Yeah,
we're looking for.
they're just volunteers that, volunteered for a committee, that they're trying to help the township. They, and
Love
if
the
it's not their
library.
fault,
That's right.
maybe they didn't know what they were supposed to do because we didn't give them any direction.
Yep.
And it's after, trustee Marks was, they're after trustee Marks was that position, so. And even when trustee Marks was that position, because I was on the board, I believe we didn't really give him much direction. He gave us reports, but I don't think the board, really did a lot with them at the time. Am I correct, John?
You're correct that the Township Advisory Council, all it receives, it meets as a separate board. It only knows through the director what the board is talking about and doing and planning. And part of that report then is available to the people on the Township Advisory Council. So they really don't get anything where a decision of meaning is made. It's more a reading of that kind of stuff by various members of the board staff, of the library staff. And it's an update, but there's no questions asked, or there are no motions made to do anything. And there's no questions about leaving it open for debate. There isn't any. Whatever they want to do, they go ahead and do, and they do it at their own board meeting. I just want to comment about something else. So if creating a universal group of instructions for members of the Township Advisory Council, that isn't going to work, and I'll tell you why. Because some of the townships use the library that it presents itself as the community center. And the community center, they tried to expand that so that the Marquette Library, acting as a community center, was the center community center for the area. And that was the way that they were waving in support for the library, because they were providing things as a community center that the local townships couldn't provide. So there's a conflict of what these representatives are supposed to be doing and paying attention to. I'm sympathetic that these people are innocent of having been given the job and not given instructions. But I'm not so sure that we're in a position to really ask what we would desire. Because what we would desire is individuals that would look into things that we'd like them to
The
look
interests of the
into.
board, exactly.
And it's not fair to ask it of these people, because they really have been great cheerleaders for the library. And they've fulfilled that obligation, I think, to a large extent, because they think that's the role they really have to play. And so we got to be, I agree with our clerk, we got to be careful about that. These are volunteers, but I think they've been misled or as well.
Just not educated from the get-go, the beginning. But actually, what Andrea said when we visited, what they are actually having, I think one of the TAC members, they rotate out now. I didn't get that clarified with her. And they sit at the table of the board when they meet. And I think they rotate out. You have this month, even though they meet quarterly, and then they come and give a report back. But it is, like John said, it's just, there's the minutes of the board meeting, and they tell the TAC, and that's it. That's it. But now they're having them at the table. Go ahead, Dave.
I mean, I don't believe it's an issue with the representatives on the TAC from the board. I think it's a problem for this board. And I think what I think should happen is you should get the job description and the duties and responsibilities that the TAC has. And this board needs to look at it. We need to ensure that the representatives have it. I mean, they certainly should have it. But before we have any discussion and make any determination of whether they are or are not doing their job, it would help if this board knew what their job was. And if we want to come up with it, we certainly have a duty and a responsibility as a board to give them separate instructions other than what they have from the TAC. We have a right and a responsibility to expect certain things out of them as being a representative of this board. But we can't tell them they're not doing their job because we haven't determined what their job is.
They don't know what their job
So
is.
I would like to see us get those duties and responsibilities and not have a meeting with those representatives until after this board is familiar with what they are and we decide if, what we need to change.
They don't even know their duties in the perspective of the library.
Well, and from that perspective, they just need a copy of their duties and responsibilities, and they can read them at their leisure if they would, but I think before they're called in to meet with the supervisor and the director of the library, this board should have a chance to get up to speed on what their duties and responsibilities are and where we separate from those duties and where we want additional information. But there's nobody here besides Trustee Marks or maybe yourself that, or the treasurer, that is comfortable discussing it because we don't know what their duties and responsibilities are. We know what we don't like about the library, but none of that has anything to do with what those representatives can do. We're just looking for information back from the library board meetings, and we're looking for them to represent this township's opinion on what we'd like to pursue over there. But we can't give them that direction until we have written it down and it's a job description. I mean, it's the same thing that the road committee and the rec committee and the planning commission has. It's duties and responsibilities. There's no reason the TAC representatives can't have the same list of duties and responsibilities.
Well, sort of, because those are our arms of our board. The TAC is not. It
know, those
didn't
TAC
start with us.
It has, they
They
have duties and responsibilities for the TAC, but they don't have any duties and responsibilities from this board as to how they're supposed to represent us.
But they don't even have them from the TAC yet. That's what Andrea wanted to give them tomorrow.
But before I would,
Figured that would be the way to start.
Lynn, before I would sit down with them too, after you get some information, and have it here, rather than take it and embarrass anyone there and saying, you're not doing this, here's what we'd like to do. I wouldn't have a meeting down there, I'd have it right here, call the two ladies in and talk to them about it, and what the board would like to see.
But this board hasn't decided what this board.
That's what I mean,
wants to see.
after we talk about what we want, and then bring them into the township here, and then explain it to them.
When you get around to crafting these responsibilities, if you have any hopes that our representatives will have any voice at all in budgeting, in staffing, in any number of operations of the library, it's not gonna happen. That's
Not-
all done that's all
From the
done
board level.
on their board.
I'm not suggesting that that will happen at all. I'm suggesting it's just the information back and forth should be much
Oh, no,
clearer.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying that I think our biggest complaint is we
And no
have
input.
found that we are conveying a considerable amount of our township monies to the City of Marquette Public Library. I think they really owe us more respect for that considerable amount of money. And I think that they should be providing us with some kind of a means to have a hand in the management of the library. If they would be kind enough to do that, and I don't think they would be, then our complaint would go away. And until you can find a path to get to that, nothing's gonna happen.
Randy?
One last comment, and, we've talked about this long enough, but I have to give the library, at least in the past, at least some credit for trying to, create the TAC and get some information to the board, because there was nothing before that. The board ruled. There's other authorities in this county, and we send a lot of trash to one that we pay a lot of money to, and we don't have any representation there either.
Same setup.
It's the same setup, and they have done nothing to create a conduit for us, or the townships, other than appointees, to have decisions in their authority also. So it's not unique to the library, it's unique on some other authorities too. So that's my observations, because we can kind of relate to both of them.
And we haven't had any reports from Glenn Johnson from the Heritage Trail either. And this is exactly what I'm trying to get to, you guys. You don't see the intent. For some reason, I'm not conveying it. We have committees out there, we have representation, and we're not getting the information, okay? That's my intent.
If-
The library's one of them. Tomorrow it could be the authority again, and the next day it could be the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. And the best way that Andrea and I figured out how we could do this was to sit down with these ladies and say, from the library perspective, this is how this was created, and this is what you're expected to do. From the township's perspective, you need to do this and this and this. I'm not talking about a job description from the township. I don't think we're at that point yet. These ladies have volunteered for something, and they're not doing what we think, or at least I think they should be doing. And I'm not gonna bring them up here in front of this board and harangue them.
But yet you'll take them up there and,
I volunteered to go there because I thought they'd feel more comfortable. They don't know me. They have no idea what I'm gonna say or what I'm gonna do. Andrea does. She thought it was a great idea. So apparently I presented it well enough to her and not to you guys that she thought it was okay.
that she's in control.
Okay, I've had enough.
Enough.
What do you want me to do? Tell me, I'll do it.
I don't have a problem with you sitting down and talking to them and see what the job, we don't even know what the job description is, so.
Nope, I have no idea.
I think that would be good to bring back to us, and talk to the volunteers and, see.
Randy, what do we want them to do?
Quite frankly, Pete, if I was a volunteer in that committee, I'd quit. Because, I would, because I think that this board has been very unfair to them. And,
It's not the people.
no, it's not the people, but it's the position, and I just, it's blown out of proportion.
Yeah. I didn't
Way
expect this
too much. Heck, if I had to do this to election workers, I wouldn't have any.
Tell me what you want me to do.
I just said meet with them, bring the job description back, see what goes on. That's what I would do.
Regardless of what the board wants.
Ernie?
I think also when you meet with them, ask them what their perspective is, just to see what their
I
perspective is.
needed to have a conversation with them. I swear, you guys told me to go meet with them. I'm gonna find it. You told me to get together with them. I'm not making appointments on my own.
No, we did.
I don't have time for
We
this.
did tell you to go talk with them.
So how, you said get together with the two ladies, so I called Andrea to figure out how to get a hold of them.
We did. We did. It's in a recording somewhere.
Yes.
Township got the numbers right here, they're in the township.
Oh, they're
I
appointees.
don't wanna step on her
Their
feet.
appointees
From
are on
New
the list,
director.
the appointee
I
list.
think a number of opinions have been expressed. I think you should walk away and go to these meetings and counsel. But I don't think any decision should be made until you communicate back to our board and let us know what you're thinking. I have the same reservations that have been expressed by others, that putting together rules and regulations or duties would probably be best done away from there, but if they are willing to put something on paper to have come back to this board to review, that's fine. I don't think you're gonna find acceptance in all of the members of the Township Advisory Group. Most of them don't want any part of it because they're happy with the way it runs.
Okay, I'm,
Because it's their community center as well.
I'm gonna cancel the meeting tomorrow. And when you guys decide what you wanna do with them, you let me know. What, Dave?
I do not have any problem with you meeting with Andrea and these two ladies if all you're discussing is the TAC duties and responsibilities and make sure they know their job from that perspective. I would like to see that perspective myself, but I think before they're given any direction of what we expect from them as a board, that we need to have the TAC duties and responsibilities. We need to see those before the volunteers are given any further direction from the board. I don't have a problem with you meeting with the director of the library and these ladies and going over the TAC duties and responsibilities, because that really doesn't have anything to do with the township. It's a point of information, because I would like that point of information myself.
Dan?
Well, I think we have to start someplace. I don't want to see the cart before the horse, because we don't know what we're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. But we have to start someplace. So if you can get some sort of direction from the director of the library and start someplace and meet with them and just go from there. I mean, I don't think we're all jumping down your throat and saying don't meet with them. But I don't want to see the cart go before the horse, and just kind of take it slow.
So what do you guys think that I would do? You think I'm gonna go in there and fire them?
Well, you were saying that,
said
you know,
I'm frustrated.
I know, but you were saying, I'm gonna tell them that they're not doing their job. But
No, you never said that.
I usually leave this here. I'm trying to explain to you how frustrated I am that we're wasting time appointing people that are not doing anything for us. If it's not the authority that we have almost no authority over in the waste, it's Glenn Johnson, he's just as guilty. And these ladies, what's the point? Committees are one of the things we have to talk about, and I'm trying to get geared up to figure out who our volunteers are. If we have people that want to volunteer, I want them to do something. Why would we want to get rid of volunteers? Why? If there's somebody who's willing to work for the township, let's make it effective.
And positive.
Yeah, there's
and
nothing.
positive.
Go to meeting, get the information, and come back. Next item.
Yep, let's move on. Give me that gavel.
If I started off on the wrong foot,
Well, that was
Well, you
50
did.
minutes ago, so.
it's ridiculous.
You're looking at it in the same view that any other committee that this township has that begins to reach a point where it's no longer producing something, what do? You eliminate the committee. And ultimately, after you find the kind of cooperation that I expect you'll find, we may have to do that.
We have to know what their duties and responsibilities are.
No, you can eliminate the committee because the committee no longer is functioning.
Well,
I'll bring something back.
we'll move on, because
Can I give my report?
No. You've said enough.
That's a polite way to do it.
Sure, go ahead.
And I don't want to talk about it after I'm done here. From the Planning Commission's July 25th meeting, there was another special use permit hearing request for short-term rentals. The applicant was Matt Blondeau, and his property is at 2352 and 2362 Werner Street. Damn. And that public hearing was set for August the 15th. That will be the second public hearing scheduled for that night. As you may recall, the first application for a short-term rental public hearing was from the Ray Family LLC, who's got property located at 250 Partridge Trail Road. So that's two public hearings at the next week's Planning Commission meeting. There was a site plan review for the property immediately to our north. It's going to be a little over 4,000 square foot office building. It was approved contingent on 5 items, which for those of you who are not familiar with the Planning Commission, it's pretty much a standard 5 items. They got to have a satisfactory design and easement for wastewater, stormwater management. They got to do acquisition of water and sanitary connection permits. Fire department review has to be complete with architectural plans. Architectural plans, by the way, are not submitted for the site plan review. They have to be developed yet. And it needs acquisition of the necessary Marquette County building permit and submission of site plan performance guarantees, which is just a deposit to make sure they do their landscaping and buffer yard. Those are pretty standard for any site plan review that gets approved, and that was the case here. The next one was a Planning Commission joint meeting with the board. It was a question if they wanted to meet in November, and all that come out of that was, yeah, set the date and we'll meet in November. The citizen survey, as the supervisor said, the Planning Commission is going to look at it out August 15th, and the board should have it at their next meeting. You've already dealt with the passport grant approval. From the rec committee, we did have a work session. We had our regular meeting at July 17th. You've already got a report on that. And we did have another work session on August the 2nd to work on the rec plan updates. And we're currently working on goals and objectives and action plan amendments. The road committee, that was tonight just before this meeting. They are also working on goals and objectives and an action plan for the transportation facilities update. The asset management program development, there came some questions out of that in conjunction with, right now we're working on putting together recommendations for the 2019 road rehab maintenance. And one of the questions that came up is there seems to be some roads that are missing on that, and there's a question that possibly we could get the manager and maybe a legal opinion on the wording on the millage language. We know it excluded county trunk lines and state and federal highways, but there were some roads that were not included in the initial list of repairs simply because they didn't need any repairs. And some of those roads they're local roads by definition, and some of those roads are coming up as needing repairs, and it's the road committees is wondering why we don't have those in our list as eligible for road rehab dollars.
But they're not county roads?
No, they're local roads. By definition, they're local roads, but they're not on our list because they were not on the list that the board saw way back when this originally was discussed. The only reason it wasn't on the board's list, this was a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, before the millage election or vote, the only reason they weren't on that list is because they didn't need any repair. But they still meet the definition of local roads. We're just looking for a little direction on whether they should be included into our 2019 maintenance recommendations for next year. We're trying to get that done now so that we can get so we don't have a problem, the same problem we got this year where the work is going to be done so late.
I doubt we would have money for it. The money that's coming is predicated upon only those roads that were involved in the plan for the bond.
Well, and I guess that's where the road committee is asking for some clarification on the language in the road millage. Did it exclude these roads specifically?
Well, the bonding did. The bonding was only for those segments of road that was listed on the repairs. That's all we have money for. We don't have money to be adding additional roads.
Well, why would we have set this up if we didn't have all of the roads in the township. I thought that was what it was, that we were gonna fix.
Well, we're
all
only
of the
missing
roads.
like 2, maybe 3 road segments that were not included in that list.
They would have needed something in the 15 years that this is gonna run, right?
That was the intent.
They
that-
still
that
weren't.
we would
Correct, and I
fix.
guess what the road committee's asking direction on is the wording such on the millage language that excluded these roads, or is this a
Because they
millage?
weren't listed individually.
Because they weren't listed individually, we're just asking for a little direction on that.
You got the millage and you got the bonding. And we have
Well,
to
the
find
millage
out
is paying-
which one's gonna
The
take
millage,
precedent.
the millage is paying for the bond.
bonding.
Right.
That's,
But the bond actually defines, does it not,
well,
in
the
detail?
bond submittal was predicated on very specific roads and road segments and the costs associated with those. So to go back now and start adding, there will not be enough money annually to pay for those. I can tell you that because I'm just barely making it now.
And I guess that's before we make a recommendation, we're just
Yeah.
looking for some more direction on that.
Is that,
Far be it from the road committee to make a decision just out of hand.
is that the answer you need, or do you need something more than that?
If that is the definitive answer and that's the way it is, then that's the one we'll go
Well,
with.
I guess that'd be a question for the bond council, you know, and for the road commission. The road commission is the one that's actually holding the bond.
And that's where we're asking for help, because obviously we can't go to bond council and ask them such a question.
So, Randy, can you contact those two?
Well, I guess I need to know what roads we're talking about, so, and an estimate of what the cost is, so we can have them do that calculation.
Yeah, but even then, we need direction on whether or not that's even an issue.
Well, that would be the question. That would be the question to the bond council. What happens if these roads are, well, certainly it
Well,
does,
after the
because
fact.
the bond is a fixed dollar amount.
Right.
So,
But the
is,
question is whether we can even do
Yeah,
something
that was,
other
that was the
than.
question from the committee is
Yeah.
can they be included?
I would think they would be
Can't they?
no different than any other repair. It would have to be a separate funding, special assessment possibly.
Well, Warner would be one of them. Warner was done ahead of time.
Warner is one of them. The ones that were excluded specifically was Commerce, Wright Street, US 41, 492. Those are the roads that were specifically excluded. The ones that apparently got no mention in the list of roads was Brookton Road and a portion of Warner Street because they weren't,
Well, then you're
they didn't
gonna,
need repair.
then you bring in Moran Street, you bring in
Correct.
all of the
Moran
other
Street's the
streets that
other
were
one.
done previously, and
Moran Street's the other one that I didn't, that was not mentioned also because it didn't need any repair at the time.
yeah, but I guess, I guess from my standpoint, in terms of the finances, I don't see that there's any money to add any additional roads because
We got 50,000 a year we budget for.
No, we don't anymore. That's rolled into the plan.
Was it rolling?
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm just asking for a clarification, and I'm not lobbying for any repair. I'm just asking for clarification. Should these roads be included because the or the millage language did not specifically exclude them, or is
Well, I think
they
it did
simply need
exclude
to be
them.
excluded?
No, I think it, well, like I said, we can ask bond counsel, but I know for a fact the bond counsel calculated the cost of the bond predicated upon what we presented to them as the project, which was specific roads, specific segments, and specific kinds of repairs. You know, to go back now and start adding additional roads, I don't think the money will be there. 1.5 mils isn't enough. We had to cut back because we cut back. We took some things out of the plan.
Were any of those roads
I don't
something
know.
we took out?
I don't know. That was, the road committee was working
No,
on that.
those roads were not specifically took out. They were not put in because they didn't need any maintenance or repair.
You just asked a question.
Oh, I know.
You got the answer almost.
Start with the question as to whether the bond is so specific that it doesn't include all of the roads in the township, but is
Well, I don't think
restricted
that's the
to
question.
the
I think
ones that are.
the question that would need to go to Tom Collis and to, I can't remember the other fellow's name now, is there room in the current bond to add additional roads to what was
That's
submitted?
the question.
Sure it is. That's the question that's being asked.
No, the question is the definition of what's covered, whether or not the
What's-
township roads are covered or only the roads that were specified. Isn't that what you're asking?
What's specified in the millage, as I recall, is the road repair plan that was adopted by the board is what was specific in the millage for the 1.5 mills, and that is what was submitted to the bond council to determine the cost.
That's what the road committee is asking for clarification on.
Okay, so what you submitted
That's,
did
if
not
that's what it says,
what
just
we're working on.
clarification of whether those, it was an oversight, or if we're locked into those roads, and we can recommend repair on roads that weren't included, but that fund has to come from someplace else. That's all we're looking for recommendations on.
I don't have the millage question here. I didn't know the discussion was coming up, so I don't know what the
We didn't know
actual
it was coming
question
up
was, but
tonight either.
Yeah.
I don't know what the actual language was, but as I recall, it was predicated upon the road facilities plan adopted by the board at 1.5 mills.
And rather than have the road committee sit there and make that determination, that's why I brought that question from that meeting that just finished to the board, to see if we can get a clarification on it for our next meeting.
You did a fine job.
Okay,
Sounds like another library question.
Roger.
There really could be or may be two different questions there, because even if the.
You got your microphone on, Roger?
As I was starting to say, there may be two different questions there that need to be addressed. Even if the millage proposal was broad enough to allow repair on any streets approved by the township board, and it's been several years since I've looked at that language, I'll have to take a look at that. There may be the practical side that Randy is speaking of, that just because it would be permissible, the dollars may not be there because of the manner in which it was funded through the bonding.
And I guess what we're asking is, if it's permissible to include them in the recommendation, I mean, the recommendations, when what actually gets done is based on how much money is available, so that could be determined later. We're just asking if they should be a recommendation, or should they be separated out as being not covered by road rehab dollars, but these repairs are recommended nonetheless, and fund them how you will, if you fund them at all.
Or have the road commission repair them.
Right.
There's a novel idea.
Well, if they are road commission roads, but I'm sitting here thinking what we're talking about, we're probably talking then about Commerce, Brookton, all of Moran,
Yep.
the other areas that haven't been constructed yet.
Well, if you
Extension
recall,
of-
there's a big section of
Montgomery,
Forestville that we're waiting on the county to see what they're gonna do, so we didn't do that this year. There's a section right outside our door here on Moran that the water drainage problem has destroyed the road. That was not included in our original list in Moran Street. And then there's Brookton Road that didn't need any repair when this whole program started, so it was not included on the list of roads to repair, because it didn't need any reconstruction at that time. But now there's a couple spots where they need to be addressed, or they're gonna deteriorate back to where Brookton Road used to be. So that's the direction the road committee is looking for.
Okay, we'll see if we can get you some kind of an answer then. Ernie?
First question is, what's the?
Yeah, I have a question, because I don't remember, on the 1.5 mills, we're generating additional dollars every year. Now, when we project it out, did we project in the additional dollars
Yes.
to?
We predicated a 7% a year increase.
Okay.
That's included in the total dollar amount.
Are we meeting that 7%? Exceeding it?
No, we're not exceeding it.
That answers that question. Now, the other question, Dave, that 4,000-foot building that's north of, where is that? Is that just on the end of?
It is, the address is,
Is it just does it adhere to our property here?
It's just north
Yes.
of it, right off our parking lot.
I
Right
guess
at
that
the
was
end.
The
big
next
ravine
lot.
down there and everything else now.
It's before the ravine.
Is there enough room?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a small building. small office building.
Yeah, there was nothing needed as far as extra consideration there. They're putting 4,000 square feet and it meets all the setbacks, so. The site plan was approved based on those contingent items.
So with regard to the prior question, we'll have to pull the millage language back out and then submit the question to bond council to see if there's room in what's been approved and bonded to add any additional roads that may not have been previously included.
If we're even allowed to do that.
Well, it's not allowed to, it's just a matter of, is there enough money?
Right.
And if there's not enough money, then the board needs to address how that might be accomplished, whether it's through the road commission, demanding, hey, we've done the rest of your roads, these are yours, fix them, which we'll end up paying 60% of, whatever the calculation of that is, and then where that would come from.
My understanding, Randy, this, the road commission was supposed to fix this road, they're supposed to ditch across.
They were supposed to fix the
Yeah.
drainage,
So the
never
drainage
did.
caused the other, so.
Yeah, that is a road, they built that road, the extension. At our, well, it was kind of a joint. We bought the land for this, and they fixed the road. Brookton, we did. That was, when we did the millage for Warner, it was predicated on what Ernie said. We calculated what the increase over the 5 years, I think it was, what that increase was going to be, and used that to resurface wedge and overlay on Brookton. It was about 74,000, round numbers.
Okay. Anything else, Dave?
Good grief, no.
No, I was gonna say, thank you, Lord.
Thank you. Well, speaking of committees, we don't have any appointments yet. That will be coming up. Public comment, we have none. Meeting wrap-up. I don't know if I dare say anything, but I've contacted Jerry Corkin twice to see if we could have our representatives come here and give us some kind of report. Kind of falls into the same conversation. And I have not heard anything.
Why would you go to Jerry Corkin? To go right to our reps? They're our reps.
We were talking about having a conversation with county commission.
Oh, the whole board?
Yeah. And then I thought, well, maybe we could just get our, because he didn't answer that first one, I'll just see if we could get our reps. So if it's all right with you guys, I will just contact our reps and see if they can come in and give us some kind of an update as to what they're doing. Yes? Okay. Take that as a yes?
They meet the same night we meet, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Somehow.
But they do meet, 1 week they meet as a board, the next week they meet as a committee of the whole, so they could have a committee of the whole meeting here. It's not a regular board meeting.
Okay, that's all I had. Anybody have any announcements?
Oh,
No? Okay. Randy?
Me and Trustee LaRue attended the MTA Summit, which I was hoping more of the board members could have got to, but the classes were okay. There wasn't as enough of variety at the regular conference, but the networking part of it was the best part, where we shared war stories on what's going on in the townships. And I can tell you that, with the townships in the Upper Peninsula and Northern Lower, we're doing pretty well, in regards to others. But it was very well presented down there, and it was good, and they had excellent food. And I don't think they do that every year. I think it's every 2 years they come up here, but I encourage the next one, if we can get some more board members to come, that would be great, because just the networking part of it is great.
I would love to go to one of those conferences. It's just, with everything I have got going on with my wife at home, it has just not worked out. I was in Green Bay for another surgery at that time, and
Well, hopefully the calendars will line up
I'm
someday for
hoping
you.
the stars will line up and eventually.
And the election was yesterday. It was as for a primary, it was very well attended. I think we had, past records, we've had about 20% total voters, and that was on the high side. Yesterday, we're about 31 to 32%, so out of 3,000 registered voters, we had about 1,000 votes. So for a primary, that was pretty well attended. And it wasn't like, we weren't like flooded, but it was steady all day long. There was always 4 or 5 people trickling in all day long, and so I was glad to see that. I'm glad the voting experience for everyone is good at both precincts, so I think that encourages them to come back. And talking about local control, taking it away from us, we had I'm not going to say the gentleman's name, but we had a voter come in yesterday, and he changed his address at the Secretary of State, and he's on the border between Marquette and Ishpeming Township, and the state went in without our knowledge and put him in Ishpeming Township to vote. And there was nothing that we could do the election day to change that. So he ended up having to drive all the way to Ishpeming Township to vote when he lives and pays taxes to Marquette Township. So I just want the residents to know, when state government talks about taking things away from us, remember that. It's not, the efficiencies of the state government are sometimes not as efficient as local government. So just remember that. We've since went in and fixed that, but we can't fix it on election day, unfortunately. So that's a little tidbit for folks to know. If you're not sure where you're voting, or if you got any questions, make sure you call us at least 30 days before the election, so we can make sure you're voting in the right place.
Was he a new person or something?
No, he had voted here, well, he's been a Marquette Township resident for at least the last 10 years. But what happened is they changed the numbers on the roads or something. I can't really speak to it because I didn't know exactly what happened, but he changed his address, and it was only a few numbers down the road, and the state put him in Ishpeming Township.
Is he set for the primary?
He will be set for November, yes. But unfortunately, I had to tell him you had to drive all the way to Ishpeming Township.
Okay, anything else? Any other announcements? John, did you?
I don't have an announcement. I just want to call everybody's attention to the latest publication from the Township Association. It gave a very detailed report about the use of centers having the need to have a generator. It goes on in detail about what the value of that is, a service that the community can provide. And actually, it really points to how serious it is when we can't provide it. Once again, we provided the room, we provided the accommodations in the community center, but we didn't finish the task of providing a way of having energy when energy is lost in the community. And that it not only affects not being able to provide a center of service to those in need, but it also spells out how important it is to be able to have the functions of the township continue to operate. And when we lose power because we didn't really complete the task of making it complete and ready to standing to turn the switch, we shut down. And if it's winter time and people have no place to go, I think we would feel a lot happier if we could provide people with a place that was warm, a place where food could be provided if necessary, bedding perhaps. And if nothing else, it provides a place where somebody can come and plug in their phone and recharge it. All of that is lost because we don't have a generator. I know times are tough, but I just want to one more time say, when time permits and finances are available, we need to really think about a generator. And if you want to read about it, it's in the latest publication of the township publication. They have a real, full, detailed report. Thank you.
Dan?
Two things on that subject. Did we ever determine the wire under the road from the fire hall to here? Was that adequate or was that not adequate?
Can be,
It
but
can be.
not for the generator.
Pardon me?
Not for the generator.
Not for the
Can
generator?
be for telephone communications and the others, but not for the generator.
And then the second thing, if push came to shove, we could set up support at the fire hall. They've got very good facilities over there for, I mean,
Some.
for some, if we had to do that. So it's not like we're totally out in the dark, no pun intended, but there's cooking facilities there, there are, day rooms, it's a nice facility that we could possibly house some people in if it really.
The only problem with that is that's our emergency operating center, so everybody would be
Parking
moved
and-
over there for communications and everything else. So we needed to build a community.
Need a generator.
Well, we needed a different facility,
do.
but we didn't build it.
Anybody else have anything? Pete?
Just want to follow up on Randy's remark about the summit. The summit down there this year, they had 84 participants, 16 from Marquette County. And I thought it was, like, the conversation was very good when we sat down and talked to them. And Randy's went to several of them. The one I sort of laughed at was elections, tips and tricks. And there goes Randy into that one. So he's trying
Learning the
with the
tricks.
elections coming up before that, right after that. But it was very good. The assessors, they had a good meeting on assessors, 5-year plan guidelines. They had ask the experts, legislation, how to comply with the Open Meetings Act, communications through conflict. That was interesting. And what's wrong with assessing. And so I thought it was very good. I wish, like Randy said, more people could attend. And I put that on my remarks to the evaluation, that you should have to find a way that more can come in the UP. Is it the money? Is it the time? It's whatever. But you get so much out of it. I mean, we had good conversation at our table. We had people from Marine, Chalkley, and then throughout the day you get to stop and talk to a guy from Newberry. I mean, there's just so much going on. It's very interesting. So I was happy that I could attend. I have a book here with all the handouts that we received, as many as I could get. And so I'll have that in the office this week, and then I'm going to take it back home. If you want one, just put your name on that. I'll make a copy of it and get you to you. So that'll be in the office this week. That's it.
Anything else? Okay. Managers report.
Briefly, you have a printed report. There's not very much on it because we've been doing an awful lot of stuff that we're dealing with at the board meetings. So, big thing though is we've started the 2019 budget process. There's a breakout in the report for you. The budget sheets were sent out to the department heads. They're to be back to me by Friday of this week. I'll be meeting with the fire department on Monday. That is the first budget that we have to get finished because we have to determine whether or not the 2.5 mil special assessment is enough to fund what needs to be funded for 2019. And along with that, you do need to schedule a special hearing, a public hearing, to deal with the assessment, and I would recommend that you do that on your next agenda. Schedule a public hearing for the 2.5 mil special assessment. That does need to be done to finalize their budget, determining what is going to be levied, and Dulcie also needs to know for sure what's going to be levied before she files with the county. So I would request that you put on your agenda for the next meeting, the public hearing for the fire and rescue special assessment. I will have to you by Sunday, September 2nd, a proposed balanced budget. It will be as of that point in time, prior to any budget discussions that you have, but the requirement is that by 120 days before the beginning of the next fiscal year, you have a balanced budget to consider. So you will have that by Sunday, the 2nd of September. The budget does have to be adopted by December 31st, and your budget adoption has to take place no later than December 18th. So with that, that's it on the budget process, unless anybody has any questions on the budget process.
So we probably, we probably should, at our September 4th meeting, then start scheduling some budget work sessions?
Up to the board. When you can schedule
Yeah.
budget work sessions whenever, but you'll have a budget to start with by September 2nd.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you that it's probably not going to be a very accurate budget because we will not know about health insurance, we will not know about retirement. It's too early in the year, but that's what the requirement is.
And we won't know anything about our election.
Won't know anything about the millage questions.
Villages either.
And
Okay,
when,
I'm just writing, hold on, I don't want to lose it for 9/4, okay.
question about the public hearing for the special assessment,
Yes.
and then the meeting with the fire department to determine if the 2.5 is going to be adequate or not. Don't we have to have one before the other, or?
Yes, I'm meeting with fire department Monday.
Oh, okay.
So we'll run through their budget to make the determination if 2.5 is adequate, and then the public hearing we would like to have at your meeting on the 21st, so we can in fact finish up the proposed budget by September 2nd to get it to you. But again, that will be a working budget. It'll be balanced, but it'll be a working budget because many of the larger pieces won't be known until October or November. It's just screwy. It's one of those anomalies that's with township government.
I had a
Events.
question, I had a question, speaking of roads, on Brookton Road and the Starbucks Road from a resident. What are we doing with those roads? Because Dave mentioned too that Brookton, I haven't been down there, is kind of,
First of all, what we
Bad.
have is a driveway. It's not a road,
They
and
consider
it's
it a
not
road.
intended for the use of commercial vehicles or Mark-Tran, and that's what's chewing it up.
yeah, but this
It
was a
was
guy
only,
just
it was
with a
for,
truck.
it was for resident access other than US 41 to get to the back of those buildings. It is not paved, and I will not be putting anything in the budget to pave it because the money isn't there.
No, it doesn't have to be paved, they just want to
Well,
have
it's-
something done
yeah.
with the holes.
Well, and the holes, as soon as it rains, the holes come back. So how much money are we gonna put into that unpaved driveway?
Gravel.
Gravel, we've been using regrind from the road commission, but again, when you've got Mark-Tran buses and semis using it, it is not gonna hold up. It is not a road.
Hmm.
So,
Do we need to put some signs up? I mean, nobody reads my signs, but No
I'm sure they'll be
commercial
as
traffic?
effective as the no dumping sign on the corner.
probably, okay. I told them I'd ask.
People don't pay attention to signs, and that's part of the problem.
Not even stop
Mark-Tran
signs.
has been told it is not for their use, and they continue to use it.
So maybe we need to call Mark-Tran.
That's who I talked to. Their drivers are still using it because it's a shortcut. So, yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. It's a not even gravel, it's reground blacktop that was laid down. There is no base under it. It was specifically only for car traffic, to get, basically to alleviate the Dark Friday traffic jam, which will be resolved with the 2019 project. So at that point, we won't even need that.
That
Yep,
road, anyway.
true.
Or that driveway, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, that's all I had.
Say again?
You got to talk about the events.
Yeah. Yep. Last Saturday was Community Day. Came off very well, very well attended. The weather held up just fine. The vendors, a couple of things we'll do differently next year. Music was great. It's like every year, new things come up, better ideas come up. Heard only good things, had an opportunity to talk with a lot of residents, had some questions about the millage questions that were coming up on the ballot, some issues about traffic speeds and about people not paying attention to signs and distracted driving and a variety of those kinds of questions. Sheriff Zybert did come and mingled in the crowd for a while. We did have the fire department on site. We had the sheriff search and rescue on site as well as our deputy. All in all, it was a pretty active, good day. I think everybody had a good time. It was well attended. I didn't hear anybody say they didn't know about it because they had no reason not to know about it. We did everything we could to make people aware. Beyond the radio advertising and the article in the newspaper, we had it on our website, we had it on our Facebook page. We sent everybody in the township a copy of the flyer, the poster. We did an e-blast of all the email addresses that we had, so I don't think we could have done anything else to communicate with folks. So it was a very good event.
How'd
Did you want
pickleball
to have
do?
anything? I don't know, because I never got there. I never got over to that far. I was tied up with the jump houses, the inflatables, the ball games, and everything else. How did it do? Tell me.
I think they did well. I was waiting for John to come play with
Hey,
me.
tell us how it went.
It did. Be honest with you, I was surprised the interest level was there. We had handouts, and you all have one tonight that I give it to you, explain a little bit about pickleball. And a lot of people enjoyed it. They tried it for the first time, and they're going to go out to Sands, and when they're playing out there, and they'll come here. And so I think it's a good thing that would happen. Even Dave got a little interested in it. He got a picture of his son out there playing for the first time, and I think it was a good ad. It didn't take too much room, but the interest level was more than I thought it would be. So
Yep, they had it on the ice rink. We had the inflatables were on the ice rink, and on the north end of the rink was a court for the pickleball, and they were doing their demonstrations there. A lot of positive comment about the new amenities at Lions Field, the pathways and the pads, the picnic tables. Was one question that came up, though. The picnic tables don't extend out over the end, so there was a question about how would a wheelchair utilize the picnic tables, for accessibility. So that's something we may have to take a look at. We may have to do some kind of an extension on one or two of those tables at the end, off the end of it. Swing set was real popular. A lot of kids. Food was excellent. Super One did a great job. Copper Crust Pizza was there, did a great job. Unfortunately, the ice cream truck didn't quite get there. It broke down on the way, so it never quite made it. The dancers were entertaining. A lot of people were standing watching them dance, and it was just all in all a good day. Didn't get rained on other than just a couple of minutes, very lightly. All the storms went around us. Just the way it worked.
we closed an hour early. We closed at 9 o'clock because you could just see the clouds coming in and a couple drops. So a little after 10, got a little rain, but we all had all the chairs picked up and put away, and so it worked out really good. I got a question for the manager. We got the County Road Commission. Could you talk to them or in your conversation with them about in the next couple of years, do some brushing on the streets? Because the trees are overcoming the road.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if, like going down Woodridge, I seen it, it's following this travel trailer, and he's pushing the trees, the limbs out. And then the semi came, and he had to sort of go around it, and I know this winter, the plows they're gonna be hitting those. So they always say, well, don't just dump something on us, give us some time to fix it. So, well, they got some time, in the next couple of years, they should start doing some trimming of the trees.
Yeah, have been advising them of areas around around the township that we can see that are starting to encroach on roadways and that, and most of those are on the eastern end of some of the roads, adjacent to the township city line, where we have some dead-end type streets where there's a lot of overgrowth, and some of the others, you pretty much, if you've got a bigger vehicle like a pickup truck or something like that, you're almost out into the intersection before you can see if there's oncoming traffic. Yeah, so we've been identifying those and passing them along to the road commission.
And they did cut on the end of Woodridge and Fair, they did trim them bushes on the corner of it. I think I talked to you, and you must have said something to somebody, but that's a little improvement, so thank you.
And we're also working with the BLP on that as well, because the BLP does some of those if they encroach on the lines or if the lines are in the trees. So the big thing is August 21st, I'd like to have a public hearing on the agenda for the fire rescue special assessment. We're supposed to do that every year.
Okay, I've got it written down.
Good.
Anything else for the manager? Okay, review of motions, Mr. Clerk.
Not too many this evening, but we had a few. Consent agenda was passed with no changes. The agenda was approved with a few amended changes. Policy discussion, we amended the resolution for the passport grant, and that motion was approved, and the clerk will take an action item on that. That'll be the clerk's job to sign that and get that to the supervisor to sign, to move forward. And the only action item I have is what the manager just previously said, was to schedule a public hearing on the next agenda for the fire department special assessment. That's it.
Okay. So the future agenda, I've got down the CIP discussion. We should have a report on the survey. We'll have a report on the AMAR review that Dulcie provided, and we'll have the public hearing on there for the fire. And then on the 9-4 agenda, we will schedule some work sessions for budget. Okay, yes, Dave?
Didn't we also have an action item to provide some more direction to the road committee and their recommendation?
I didn't write that down. You asked,
That's actually, you
Manager
asked
to
the
do that.
manager. And,
So-
that's
Okay.
the
that's on
manager.
his list. His to-do list. Board member comment? No, you can't, Dave. Put your hand down. Ernie?
One thing came up that I just found out, that we have another business going to the tax tribunal,
Yep.
which is the theater and that. And once thinking about that, I think that information should come to the board,
I was gonna,
everyone.
yeah.
On top of that, we should also draft a letter, send it to our 2 representatives on the county board, that this is happening, and our 2 state representatives. And also at the same time, a little write-up on a monthly one on the data that we send out with the water reports. Let the residents know. This affects them, because once we lose this revenue, we gotta make up that revenue somewhere else, and it's gotta come from the residents in that. So the more information we have out to the public, the better off we're going to be in that. And continually let everybody know what's happening in that.
Do we have any restrictions on that, Roger? I mean, it's, as far as publicizing the tribunal,
It's all
Okay.
subject to a FOIA request at a minimum.
I just want to make sure before anybody starts thinking direction.
I was thinking that once the letter got to us, it's actually a public document anyway, so you could actually, you can actually publish that.
I think we should set up the procedures so when it happens, it comes out everyone. Because I'm sure the school districts don't know it's coming, and whoever else, that this is, the library is gonna cost you money. If they approve it, it's going back another 2 years.
Well, then you've got to think about the flip side to that too, because that's me seeing both sides. You've got, well, I don't know. Okay, it's just a suggestion, that's fine. Roger?
actually, the taxing jurisdictions who receive millage will be made aware of that because they have to be served a copy of the petition. And then we serve a copy when we respond of our answer to it as well. But the general public would not be aware of that in the least, but the school and the various taxing jurisdictions generally would be aware.
They would all get it then, hey?
Yes.
The 911 and everybody, okay.
What about all the rest of the or the businesses that have already done it? I'm sure the public possibly doesn't know all of them that are in that.
I don't know them all either.
Yeah, well, that's, if we're gonna make it public for one, let's make it public for all of them.
We can get a list, I can get a list from Dulcie. When she comes next time, she could probably give it to us.
And start at this point in time and then just keep it updated.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. That. Anything else? Did you have your hand up, Randy, or? Okay. Dave, did you have something?
That's really nice. I couldn't talk anymore.
Pete, is your hand up?
Yeah.
Is Dave telling you what to say?
No, I don't want him to talk anymore. No, on the assistant chief, I think we should get on that. Let's not drag our feet like we did last time.
That's not our job.
No,
the
but we
assistant.
can encourage him. The way he talked, he said he had something in his always, I got, so tell him that we don't want to wait
No,
forever.
I've been talking with him.
No,
in the
because he has to
process.
bring that back to the board.
No.
Oh, really?
That's why I said, we don't have anything to do with that. That's his.
Chief appoints the
Okay.
assistant.
He can do his own.
All right, and I guess what I read is not right then.
Is he not waiting for a few things to clear up?
I don't know.
I
I'm just
haven't
saying,
talked to him
I don't think we
lately.
should wait forever. You know, so. Next thing on your supervisory report, could you just put this about the solid waste? It seems like every week we get, every time we have, it, just make that as a report and put a little bit more in there about the township,
Separate, sure.
more so than just, we can read this, but for us to go in and go talk to, say, Kirk and Dulcie and all the other people, it's gonna take a lot of time, and I try to stay away from that a little bit, but I'm gonna start doing it more and get my questions answered and what's going on in the township. But you could add that into your supervisor's report, what's happening in the township, a little bit more than you have been.
As far as solid waste goes?
No, would you just have to send a report on that to us, we can get a copy of it.
Okay.
But just, we'd like to know what's going on in the township for your report to us.
Okay.
Alright.
Any other board member comments? Okay, I just need one more motion
Move
then.
to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor?
It's in the-
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
$8.
8:39.